So finally, I understand the magic of pain. The magic of pain. And I know, and I've heard, just by reading history, all the different torture chambers and all the different things that people did to get a society programmed in a specific way, into a specific belief. And so many different cultures out there use pain as a way to program people, which is why probably the 1960s was so extraordinary, because the pain and suffering of the war, and then all the cults and the cult leaders inflicting sexual pain, inflicting physical pain, and then all the serial killers because of all the different experimentation. And that even bled over into the 80s and 90s and even today. And we see that in families, because then the system wants to show you how bad it can get, how horrible humans can be. It's not always just things you read in history. It's stuff that happens even today in the music industry, in high levels of government, because people were programmed that way, highly sexualized. And through that sexuality and pain also came innovation. And that's a crazy fucking thing. Controlled pain equals innovation, and you can't be the one to inflict pain on someone else. Pain equals innovation. And also predatory behaviors. So you can imagine why Ted Bundy, a lawyer and also a serial killer, and it's crazy. That was the crazy magic of our society, was the fact the system had to inflict a certain amount of pain and suffering and hardship to get the best out of people, but then it has to be done carefully. And then people trying to do that personally, because they were programmed that way. And then they developed babies and developed offspring that became predators. And either the system had to channel that predatory behavior through love and sex and family. And then you get sexual predators, you get incest, you get molestation, you get all these, oh my gosh. So I'm saying, programming animals, children, people, everything, it is not something that a lay person thinks they can do. Fuck no, because it starts right out at the bat, right? As soon as that kid is born, what are they seeing? What are they experiencing? What are they eating? What are they being forced to believe in? What kind of spells are they casting on themselves and everyone else around them? And I remember yesterday when I was, I felt so good in the morning, and I was making breakfast or lunch or something, and I felt a weakness, like I feel right now. Like I would hold like a jar, and I would feel like my arm be like this, like a weakness. I'm like, fuck, something's coming up. Something's coming through. Look at my arms. Look, there is no there's no crazy cellulite. This is just, I have strong lymph nodes. I got strong arms, and I feel it. And I felt the weakness. My arm was like, oh shit, something's pushing through. And then I felt the pain in my hand, my arm, pain in my wrist, and then in my fingers. I'm like, okay, something's pushing through. And then this morning around 3:00, I was just like, oh gosh, blowing my nose. Like blowing my nose. I could feel my whole head fill up with mucus. I'm like, oh no, here we go. Another growth, another frequency change, another growth. Where did that colony form unit originate? Well, I have 39 trillion microbes in my body. Something was affected. Something was able to replicate extremely fast and turn into a pain of the body pushing those CFUs throughout my lymph nodes, and then eventually comes out in the wash in the morning. And so I'm like, yeah, if I was any other person, I would have died from a heart attack. I would have had a stroke yesterday. That's the thing. That's why they say that before you have a heart attack, usually it's arm pain. Well, why? Because the body is trying to push those clots through the system, or jetsam and flotsam. And people feel like an arm pain, a sharp pain, arm pain, whatever. And then they get that heart attack or stroke, which is why they used to recommend taking aspirin, but not anymore, to thin the blood, but not anymore, because that would also contribute to other issues. So no more aspirin anymore. I mean, at this point now, you really have to condition for the pain and suffering. And if you can't condition for the pain and suffering of retention and release, then yeah, you're going to have to take away the magic of your future, take away the magic of capability, you're going to take away the magic of everything. If you cannot handle pain and suffering and feed it and release it, you're done. It's done. It's a suffering right now that's like no other for so many people. And I've been conditioned to suffer, but I use that suffering to either study for tests, like passing tests in the insurance world, and also just get through very difficult situations that I don't have complete control over, but I can get out if I need to. And so, yeah, the pain is the magic. I've always said it, but how do you talk about it? But there has to be done very carefully, because you don't want people to be like, oh, I'm going to go and hit my animal or hit my kid, and they'll be magically, no. You cannot inflict violence on anyone, whether it's bullying them and trying to get them to convert or hit them or anything else. You cannot inflict pain and suffering through, politics, religion, science, or spirituality on anyone. Only the government can do that, because the government understands, and they have a team of scientists have done and seen the experiments and understand history to understand what the human population needs to advance themselves. And then those who cannot handle pain and suffering, not only do they become predatory, but they also become extremely consumptive in their behaviors, and they eat everything and destroy society that way through their consumerism. And we have that in the population. And so yeah, pain was and is the magic and the avenue to program people into positive and negative reinforcement. But here's the thing, I can handle the pain and convert that pain into intellectual ability and physical capability, because I am actually physically strong. But I can never inflict pain onto anyone else. Only scientists and the government can do that. Okay? And so untrained parents are not allowed to use corporal punishment anymore. And you can tell what kids had corporal punishment used on them without it being matched with something that was going to help them versus hurt them. And yeah, we have kids who are loving you to death and who will eventually be loved to death, literally. And we have kids who are extremely violent, extremely predatory. And they were already shown violence through the video games, through the movies, through all the internet, whatever. And also aggressive sexuality. And so, so the system had to do their experiments so that way they can detect what these kids are going to turn into or what they have experienced. Now, the system would rather have a kid be loved to death and love things to death versus be violent. But again, that also has its own drawbacks. When you're loving things to death, then you could be using manipulation. And that's, there's human trafficking and there's sexual predation, and that it's a fine line. And so that's why it's kind of done with, it's over with. It's only the parents who can figure out, and the adults, not even parents, but adults, who could potentially hybridize their childhood and potentially even redirect where they're ending, where they're going, where they were going. And I'm telling you, the power's in the pain. This is for the adults who might have what it takes to convert that pain into intellectual capability and physical capability. And I couldn't tell you if you could do it or not. You are the one that has to determine if you can handle pain and suffering, and you have the means and the wherewithal and the financial ability, and you're in a safer place. You're not somewhere like in Florida, might be taken out by a hurricane, but you are somewhere where you probably could have a relatively peaceful situation so you can deal with that pain and suffering. And I tell you, that's crazy. And so discipline, must be done extremely carefully. I mean, I'm not going to read all this word for word because it's crazy, but I remember, the last 7-8 years, all the different memories that came up, and I had to convert those memories into something that was usable for me, not so much for retribution or being like, why me? Why? No, because all of us were given a role. All of us were used for something. And now when you're an adult and you have the physical capacity to redirect and develop another evolution, so that way you're not just one dimensional. You're not all love, 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 or just a woman who just wants to be sexual and that's it. You have other gifts that you can tap into and develop another type of evolution, adaptation. And so, but if you've surrounded yourself by people who are keeping you reinforced in a very specific one dimension, yeah, breaking free from that jail, from expectation, nope, not going to happen. And so, the pain is the magic, and you have to support that pain. And so genius is not just capitalizing on the gifts your parents and the community gave to you. Genius is when you can sit and study in the midst of pain and suffering and still utilize the concepts to save your own life, but also prove yet another avenue for the human race to advance themselves. Okay? And so, so I was given the gift of beauty and, tapping into my sexuality down the road, but also intellectual capability and self-discipline. And self-discipline would mean, when I was a kid, I was made to sit on my own and just sit with myself. For days, if I lied about something, then I would get punished. I'd sit on myself. So I'd sit on my own and I would think about stuff. Maybe I'd read a dictionary or read a book or something. Memorize the Israeli national anthem, okay? Which I did sing a couple of years ago on Facebook. It's somewhere in my videos. But self-discipline is sitting by yourself. And that's a training that you get as a kid. I don't know if you can do that as an adult. That's a training you get as a kid. When you can sit by yourself and reflect on everything. And even though you may not reflect on things that the parents want you to reflect on back then, but now when you're an adult and you're able to tap in and convert all those bad memories into something usable, then you're able to potentially reflect on the changes that are going on and save yourself. I'm not saying it's just guaranteed that you could save yourself, but to develop a man who was raised and reinforced in a one-dimensional sphere of influence, here's the thing. Just sit with yourself and reflect on yourself. You could develop another way to do things. And so there are contexts of one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, and so on. But those contexts have more to do with either geometry or spirituality. In my context of personality dimensions, if a one-dimensional person is a man, for example, who only does man things like watch car ads on YouTube, hunts and fishes, and hangs out with buddies, then obviously it would be extremely hard to develop a two-dimensional man who might enjoy the opera, observe a play, or read a book in the corner of the library. Because remember, there are characterizations. Some men say that's gay or something, or that's too feminine. I'm a man. I only do man things. And there are men out there who only do man things. So they can't go outside of that persona. They're stuck unless they're willing to deal with the pain and suffering of change. And that would include ridicule from their other male peers. To develop a man who was raised and reinforced in a one-dimensional sphere of influence, to be collegiate, intellectual, open to new ideas, calm down his hormones, and have more tolerance to diversity, would require the magic of internal pain and suffering to change, not survive. Okay, so it's developing new neural pathways, and that's painful. So men are in pain all the time, as are women. But what is that pain and suffering doing for you? And will that pain and suffering help you develop another downline of immortalized germline cells with a cabinet of mortal somatic cells? Okay? And so the magic of supporting pain and suffering, also matching that pain and suffering to lessons and academic excellence, takes a foundation based upon developing more than just one personality that has not been exposed to violence on TV, death, or destruction. Because once you start using violence, pain, and suffering matched with death and destruction on TV, you might develop serial killers, sexual predators, and bullies in the population. or someone that loves you to death, right? Love, love, love. And then manipulation through kindness, through love, through hate, through forced conversion, through proselytization, through politics, religion, science. And so, yeah, there's a whole scientific method to program people to be adaptable, but also functioning members of society who can control their impulses and be self-disciplined. So imagine a child who has seen such violence in the family and on TV, and then spends the rest of their life reenacting or resisting what he or she grew up with. Imagine a child who has been given all the pleasure in paradise, toys and experiences, with no real pain and suffering. You get playboys and playgirls chasing drugs, women, men, and addictions coupled with male-female cliques. And so when I was sitting on the on my couch, and I'm just doing this so I can just help the blood flow, and then this morning after last night I blow my nose and feeling the pain that way, I took a hot shower, not too hot but hot enough, and just the water run over me. It felt good for a minute, and then a little bit of the pain returned, but not too much. And then as I'm typing, I'm in pain typing, and that's where all the innovation is flowing through my fingers. So I have the intellectual and the words and the concepts up here already memorized from the last 7 years of studying stuff that I didn't catch when I was in school, and also remembering all the different experiences, but then using that pain, the energy of pain, into developing this thought process. And that's how you use the pain, is if you're disciplined enough to understand how to use that pain to your advantage. Or people will go on drugs, or they'll carve out the pain, or they'll distract themselves to death, literally to death. And so as I was remembering yesterday, the pain I went through typing repetitive numbers on the computer almost 24 years ago and needing a wrist guard later, the pain that came up for me in my wrist as I am typing developed these observations about raising children and the types of children our society is raising. So when I initially started writing this post, it was about just all the memories through the pain and suffering, physical trauma memories, and it could be just all the injuries and the diseases that I, remedied away or put to sleep or used jelly juice to kind of cure. But then I remembered, oh shit, even this pain was also giving me the ability to observe how I was raised and what that contributed. How I was raised was contributing to my genius. Okay, now that's like bias. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'll tell you what I'm saying. Nobody in my circles of whatever are saying this. If anything, people are resisting me. And those are the divergence in your society. When even the people in the conspiracy world who are supposedly divergent in their world are like resisting what you're saying. Because I keep changing. I keep flipping back and forth. For government, anti-government. For vaccines, anti-vaccines. They're like, what the fuck, Jillian? You're hypocritical. Yeah, hypocrisy, when you think about it, hypocrisy is necessary. And that's understanding both sides. And even though hypocrisy is a pejorative, hypocrisy is also a strength, just like pain. It has to be utilized extremely carefully, or else you're condemning someone for something that you're also doing yourself. And so hypocrisy could also mean you understand the merits of the arguments the government is instilling upon the population, as well as the people who are resisting what the government's doing. And even though it's hypocritical, it's not condemning someone for something that you're also doing yourself. And there is a distinct difference that some will miss because they want to stay biased and one-sided. But if you want to survive, you can't be biased. And so you can almost predict the outcome of the children's future by not only who their parents are, but also what they are being raised with and the kind of society they live in. And so right now, in a very extremely aggressive environment with kids raised with violence and extreme sexuality, guess what you're going to get? A bunch of sexual predators who are going to get married, screw their wives to death, or have a bunch of kids and be done with. And you can't stop it because that's what the system intended, or they wouldn't develop all this different programming. But there's also people who develop that anyways. So imagine taking away Hollywood, even way back and before in the 1700s. Okay, if you were so rich, you'd have a bunch of kids and there'd be violence. I mean, there was Jack the Ripper. And if you were poor, you couldn't afford so many kids. Maybe you had one that would survive out of like 5 pregnancies. And imagine what that kid had to deal with, girl or boy. Okay? So, anyways, I'm not going to go too much into all that. You can read that and say whatever you say about it. I don't care. But, someone posted this: the human eye can only see between 430 and 770 terahertz, THZ? Tetrahertz. Our ears can only detect sounds between 20 hertz or 20 kilohertz. These ranges make up a fraction of the total sound and light frequency range. This means there's a lot going on that we cannot see or hear. But then I'm like, and they're saying so there's something around us. I'm like, would you think the afterlife would be overpopulated? Because you think amount of death and destruction for at least more than 20,000 millions of years? You think the afterlife would be overpopulated? Can the dead kill the dead and send them off into another realm? I don't know. But would you want to be in competition with other dead people who've died from like years and years ago? Yeah, I was seeing some weird shadows this morning when I was blowing my nose. I'm looking at the darkness, straight at the darkness, going like, oh God, I see a shadow here. I see a shadow here. Something's walking past here. Whatever. I wasn't scared because I was blowing my nose. Okay. And so, yeah, MAGA, Magus, high-ranking Church of Satan. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know, man. You guys will figure it out. Tardigrades are getting gene-edited in the lab. And I have muffin dreams. And having one conspiracy person or even 5 of them on your Facebook, if you're not actively understanding our arguments, then the people on your Facebook who are diverse are just someone you can make fun of or resist. It's not something that you're willing to even take on. So the people around you, the people who have a mainstream audience and they are the divergent, you can't convert your friends. They're using you as a tool to make fun of, to develop a resistance against. So you just be what you say, because no matter what you're going to say, nobody on your Facebook who thinks opposite is really going to like you. And those that believe what you're believing, well, you don't need to preach to the choir. So you just say your observations, and whoever gets it, gets it. It doesn't matter if they're mainstreamer, alternative mainstreamer, or someone that agrees with you. You're always dropping information and give people the choice. That's it. You're not trying to convert anyone, because there's no converting people who are using you as a tool for whatever. Okay? And so I realized that. So that's why I stay on my own. Because the more truth that I say, the more people are who want to resist. Yeah, well, why would you put yourself in a position to have people resist you, even behind fakery? Yeah, there's no such thing as real true friends. There are people who you need to party with, there are people who need to distract you, there are people who you need for financial whatever. If you're in a financial contract, like a marriage or a partnership, I understand what you have to do. All of us have to survive the contracts that we're in. But if you're just hanging out with people and you're just like, whatever, even if they're your kids, you're not in a financial contract with them. So then what are they being used for? What are your friends and family being used for? What are your kids being used for? What are your parents are being used for? It's I don't even say it's friends. There is an incentive for why you keep the people around you that you keep. Unless you're in a contractual obligation, and I hope you survive the contracts that you're in. And so the less contracts that you're a part of, the less obligations you have to fulfill, and the less expectation. But when you're around people who you're not contractually obligated to, then you're just being sucked dry. So I just say what the fuck I say, because I'm done with society. That world's over with. Now I just watch people try to survive it. And just say what you say. Don't be afraid, because eventually you're going to have to relinquish all those ties anyways. What are you going to do? Live their life? When they're going out every weekend and partying, and that's their MO, and they want you to do that? So what are you going to do? Maybe see them once a month and talk about what? That you're sitting at home dealing with pain and suffering, typing, or what your job is doing? So you're around people all the time that you're contractually obligated to. So when you're contractually obligated to a boss and you have 80 employees all around you and you can't work from home, that's a lot of obligation to fulfill. And then you have dependents. That's another obligation to fulfill. And you have animals. That's another obligation. It never ends. And so until you can end the obligations you must fulfill, you'll constantly be in a war, constantly be in competition at the micro level, as well as the financial level. And then it's a fight to the death. And then people take away the pain through their friends and family through practices. So they take away any ability to adapt. They take away any future possibility. So if you're in my world that can convert the pain and suffering to innovation and survive and survivability, then you won't have so many people around you. And that's why I posted yesterday that the one divergent, the one conspiracy person is not going to be enough in anyone's world. Yeah. You got to actively want to change. And that's some crazy shit. So I just say what I say just because I'm just channeling my pain through intellectual capability, through typing, through practicing how to express myself. And that's the whole point of what I'm doing. Again, it's not to convert people or to slam anyone. It's to promote my observations and practice expressing myself through speech, but also through the written word. And if I spend the rest of my life doing this and making observations and writing the future for me, which could be the future for humanity, hey, it's a win-win situation for everyone. And everybody gets a choice. I'm not actively trying to convert anyone. I'm not denigrating anyone specific. I'm just making an observation about our society of why it's in a fucked up situation. And why society or why the system is now trying to guide reproduction carefully. Because look what we're producing out there. We're producing monsters and victims and predators. And it starts in the family. It starts with the parents. So you figured out that everybody's programmed for something. Just figure out, are you willing to live out that programming and die for it, or do you have the means to evolve? Most don't. So they take on entertainment to keep them distracted. And I understand that too. All right, bye.